Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses, and it is a new era at Pittodrie as Jimmy Thelin'S reign gets underway, but it's also a new era here on Red Tinted Glasses after officially signing to be a co-host. Phil Mayer is also joining the show, along with Calum Wright, making a welcomed return as the season is now concluded. This is where Calum loves to shine, the summer period when transfer rumours are aplenty. It's a shame we don't have any though, Calum, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. I've just come back just to make sure Phil knows his place as he officially joins. I've got a couple notes on the goalkeepers that everyone's already seen, but that's about it. Other than that, very boring so far. So if someone wants to start making some rumours out of nowhere, then that's more than welcome. So I can just get excited about it for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. And Phil, there's not been really a lot to talk about since we last joined, but I guess on the show we do have plenty to kind of digest because we waited a week to kind of have an opportunity to go through the League Cup group stage draw, so we'll catch up on that on the show, and we'll kind of maybe feel what we want to see from Jimmy Thelin'S era as it kicks off.
Yeah, no, it's been a bit boring having nothing to fill the weekends, but a little bit less stressful at least, which is quite nice. Apart from, got to now deal with Calum, that's fine.
And well, obviously we're recording this episode right on the back of the Scotland game, so after most of the Aberdeen games were a tough watch, that game this evening against Gibraltar was just a tough watch as well, so it makes us feel very much at home. But we'll start off the show tonight with a little bit of a news roundup, so like cue ITV News at 10 theme tune, and I guess the biggest news story in Scottish football, and does have an effect on Aberdeen, is the decision made to ban plastic pitches from season 25-26. Obviously, one plastic pitch has gone from the Premiership in Livingston as they were relegated. Kilmarnock now remain the only side with a plastic pitch, but already had plans in place to move back to grass for this season. Calum, do you see this as a positive move for Scottish football or a backwards move? Because obviously your other local club, Wraith Rovers, currently play on a plastic pitch. They were a club that were opposed to this, given the kind of community purpose it serves. Mm-hmm. Do you see both sides of the argument around this decision?
I do, yeah. Especially because some of the grass pitches in the Premiership are fucking not playable for about 3 months to a year as well, which is another separate issue that probably needs addressed. I can understand the sort of community aspect from the clubs that are not in the Premiership, certainly, and I think it's certainly correct that they're allowed to play with it until that certain point and do receive a grace period as well should they get promoted. But ultimately, I am glad less injuries for players, and apparently now I've been told by a man who used to be involved with the Groundsman of the Year awards that plastic pitches aren't as cheap to run as you would think, because they turn into a mat essentially. So you've got to really keep the plastic grass sticking up essentially, which is apparently a challenge. There's that as well. But I'm glad that it's gone or will be going, and I'm certainly glad there's only one in it this season, because some of our football was eye bleeding at the best of times, let alone when they stuck it on a plastic carpet essentially.
I'm glad you added that bit on the end, because it wasn't just the type of pitch that was making our football eye bleeding. Interesting point there you make from the groundsman, because I'm sure it was Graham Giles that I saw on Twitter making the point that Denmark are looking to move to ban plastic pitches from an environmental point of view, because the little like black pellets are apparently really bad for the environment, and everyone's about how we need to save the planet and do what we can for the environment. So I'm sure if the SPFL and SFA sold it as an environmental issue, everyone would have been very much on board. But Phil, I think from a general point of view for most Scottish football fans, the games that we do see on plastic pitches, as Calum says, tend not to produce the best quality of football, albeit we did up until recently have quite a good record down at Kilmarnock on their pitch. And I know that if Ewan or any of the Killy View podcast guys are listening in, will say, well, teams have to adapt to come down and play on our surface, but it just levels it out literally on the playing field because everyone will be playing on the same surface. And I do agree with Calum. I think it's good in the sense it should reduce the amount of serious injuries. You know what happened to Fraser Fivey when we played at Alloa, but also players that do get injured, often on their recovery from injury, don't play on that surface, which is a disadvantage to certain teams because they might play on the actual grass.
Yeah, no, I think, like you say, that the games, I mean, going to Livy, I don't think I've ever watched an entertaining game at the Spaghetti Had ever. So I'm glad that's just gone by default. I think, the environmental side is just all a bit woke, Glen. Come on. But no, I think the main thing I think people were not really realising, it was the players that called for this ages ago. I mean, it was the PFA reps that brought up the fact that the players didn't enjoy playing on a plastic pitch. They didn't like the risk it posed. So, yeah, okay, maybe a few clubs will lose that slight community element. You'll maybe have a slight difference in the sort of cost of running, but I think it's better for the players. I think it's better for the game as well. With more teams sort of getting that European stage to sort of play on. It's a bit, not to be a bit sort of central beltist here. It's a bit tin pot to see it getting all played on a plastic pitch. So yeah, no, I'm glad they've gone.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what those clubs, as I mentioned, the likes of Wraith Rovers, Livingston, do from season 25-26. Obviously, Wraith falling at the final hurdle on their opportunity to play Premiership football next season. So it means the Mallard on Ross County survive, or the Northern Alliance, as Phil was calling it on the show previously, remains intact. Rumours is your go-to, Calum. You said you've done some homework, which is great to see for the show. So the only rumour that I've seen in terms of goalkeepers, I know Robbie McCrory was loosely mentioned, but the kind of one that's maybe more been doing the round was Stojan Letkovic. What have you got to tell the viewers and listeners on the Serbian goalkeeper?
Yes, I do have some notes on him. So he's 6'6", plays for FK Radniki Kragujevac. I don't know, but he's contracted until 2025. But the rumour is apparently he has a low six-figure fee release clause in his contract. And I went a little bit deeper to find out how he'd performed at FK Radniki and so on. They finished fifth in the league in Serbia. So their league, 16 teams, then it splits into 8 and 8. So they finished fifth in the top half, which, for context, Ruby's team, Novi Pazar, finished ninth this season. So Ruby came in, was decent, was okay, and if he's coming from a better side, then that's surely a good thing, perhaps. But the fact he's been linked to Rangers and Werder Bremen as well is interesting. If we sign him, then that can only be a good sign, I guess. But how much we look into those links as well as this one is yet to be seen, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think, Calum, there was also a link with staying on the goalkeepers as well. There was a goalkeeper, Icelandic, I believe it was, we were speaking about, Phil, who's at Brentford. Have you got notes on him as well, do you?
Not as much,
Okay.
but he played with Thelin'S at Elfsborg. He's 22 years of age. He is contracted for a wee while yet, and FotMob has his market value at 1.5 million. So you'd imagine it would be a loan, but 22 years of age, only 6'2", though, is one to keep an eye on, given it's someone who's previously worked with. And I suppose Telem will have a lot of recruitment, so if we can get someone in that he's worked with before and he presumably trusts, then it's probably a good start point, even if it is only a loan deal.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, would you be opposed to a loan deal around a goalkeeper? It's a position that we clearly identified as one of a need. We've been stung before with goalkeeper loans. Is it a position that we should be looking to secure somebody on a more permanent basis?
Yeah, I think, you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the Danny Ward PTSD, I think we'll all get. So I think we spoke about it the last couple of episodes about sort of the spine of your team really being that sort of defensive consistency, whether it's, your centre half pair and your goalkeepers, they really need to know each other. So I would like to see us sort of build for the future. If we do go after the Serbian boy, then maybe him, Ruby, and whoever else is sort of maybe playing at centre half, have them for a few years and consistently build from there.
What I would also say is that it's something to be wary of, that Ellery Balcom has just joined St Mirren on loan from Brentford as well, so that would leave them with Mark Flecken and Thomas Strakosha, the Albanian, and this Icelandic man. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, so maybe there's nothing in that. Unless they bring in another goalkeeper, then I would certainly think perhaps that's going to be the case, but all just rumours, of course, Glenn, but you know how I enjoy them.
You've very much got your finger on the pulse on the Brentford goalkeeping situation, so it's good to see you on top of that. But Phil, signings get fans excited, and obviously, as we touched on at the top of the show, it's a new era for the club today, 3rd of June, with Jimmy Thelin'S officially taking charge. But kind of hidden almost in the announcement statement was the fact that the club have sold 9,000 season tickets for, I think it's only the second time in our history, and we're now looking to push on to 10,000. Signings get Calum excited, but fans get excited equally by new signings, and clearly excited by the prospect of the new manager as well. Just how impressive is the fact that we've already sold 9,000 tickets at this stage of the closed season, I guess?
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I think especially the fact we've not even had the sort of departures list. No one knows who's even still going to be going about in the playing squad. So just sort of going off of the confirmation of the dugout to be at this point is pretty good going. But I think it's all really down to the fact we have kind of pushed the boat out and gone a bit different. I think if we'd gone for the safe route of what BBC were sort of throwing about of Jack Ross's and whatnot, I don't think we would have been in this position. So I think it's kind of a bit of a testament to Burrows and Cormac trying to sort of take us in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, and Calum, you were one that was reeled in by the opportunity to win a 5-year season ticket. But on that point that Phil makes, Burrows and Cormac stayed patient, albeit we had to experience Barry Robson and Neil Warnock before we got our man. And they've gone out, been patient, and secured Jimmy Thelin'S services. As Phil touches on there, they've got their man, but now the fans are almost getting behind what Cormac and Burrows have done in doing that, and saying, right, we'll get behind your decision to put the best interests of the club there, and we'll now go out and buy season tickets in close to record numbers.
Yeah, I mean, they said they were aiming for the total from last season eventually, which was 10,500. To be only 1,500 off at this point is absolutely excellent. I think it will only grow when there is more there is signings coming through the door. I say more signings. I mean, Junior Hoylett, if he stays, that should be an extra 500 off the mark. What a man he is. And I suppose also then with the Viaplay Cup group stages as well, if it's even called that now, is it the Premier Sports Cup? I don't know anymore. It's changed that often. We'll call it the League Cup and stick with it. Yeah. If that goes exceedingly well, the group stages, and there's some excellent football and show there, there's still the opportunity for people to nip in before the start of the league season too. So I wouldn't be surprised if we reach that 10,500 mark, but if we can even get to the 10,000, then it's absolutely excellent to start off with, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just on Junior Hoylett, congratulations to him on getting called up or recalled back to the Canada squad ahead of their European tour for their friendlies this week. I know there's been some rumours around him potentially joining Notts County after his stint with Aberdeen. That obviously remains to be seen, but I think just testament to obviously the work that he put in at the end of the season. I know some people are countering that with saying the quality of opposition we were up against being in the bottom six, but I think it's also just a show of what you can do at Aberdeen. You do get that international recognition, and congratulations should also go to Jack Milne, of course, replacing Josh Doig in the Scotland under-21s, joining Connor Barron in that squad as well. You've also got the likes of Jamie McGrath getting a call up as well, and we've seen now obviously former Don Ross McCrory making his Scotland debut tonight as well. So there is a pathway when you're playing for Aberdeen to make it to the national levels as well. So we don't want to speak too much about the national squads because I think the three of us will get hugely distracted about Germany and drinking Steins in a few weeks. So why don't we go on to speaking about the League Cup? So the League Cup draw was made last Wednesday, and the first competitive action of the season will see the Dons make the long trip to Palmerston to face Queen of the South in a 5:15 kickoff on the 13th of July. In the group as well is East Kilbride, Airdrie and Dumbarton. I've done that in fixture order. I'll get both of your thoughts on the draw first, and then we'll kind of just touch on the fixture slightly. Calum, I'll start with you. What was your thoughts on seeing the draw?
I don't know. It didn't excite me. I don't know why. Just looking at that list made me feel a little bit miserable. But I suppose there'll probably be some good away days in there, especially those who definitely managed to get to Dumfries will be in some state by the time they get there, one would imagine. So that's good. But I don't know. I suppose I'm happy that there's going to be a decent championship side in there, actually, because it'll provide more of a test going into the league season. So there's that. But jumping off the page, it's just not particularly exciting. A reunion with Mick Kennedy that I'm really not looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. That was the first thing when I saw East Kilbride was we're going to have to hear all about it all over again. Airdrie did kind of jump out at me, Phil, as being an attractive tie, but being up in Lossiemouth last week, didn't note that the fact that was now going to be a home game. I thought that would have been a very tasty away game. Phil, you also spoke about kind of the fact that we've not seen the release note yet from some of the players, but those that have been kind of following Scottish transfers on social media this week will note that Aaron Reid, who joined the club from Turriff last season, has left the club to join Airdrie. So we'll actually come up against former Don Aaron Reid and Mason Hancock as well, who currently play for Airdrie. We'll also be coming up against Michael Ruth, again, former Don in Dumbarton. So there's a little bit of a connection there. But what was your reaction to the draw? Similar to Calum in the sense that not overly exciting, but opportunities to visit new grounds?
Yeah, I think it's pretty dull. Like Calum said, it's a bit of a dull draw. I swear a few years ago they used to do it regionalised, which I kind of liked in a way. I suppose, getting to Dumfries if you bide in Peterhead's a bit of a arsehole, really. No, I mean, I think I think we spoke about sort of maybe try to go to Queen of the South just to sort of maybe tick that one off. But yeah, just not really looking forward to the axis of evil of Airdrie and East Kilbride as much as I do like a Black Rooster now and again. I'm just really just not wanting to see another impassioned speech from good old Mick.
I'm just glad that that game's not been selected for TV, so we won't have to see an impassioned speech. But you never know, it might be an opportunity to get Cy Ferry on the podcast because he loves hooting himself out to promote East Kilbride at this rate. The Queen of the South game, I think, is a great opportunity with it being a Saturday for fans to tick that off that certainly haven't been there. I think the last time we played them in cup competition was a midweek, and Andy Considine scored an extra time winner, if I'm correct. East Kilbride being away, obviously at the on the Saturday, the 20th. That's a bit of a shame because I know some people are talking about that game potentially being moved to either Hamilton or Airdrie to try and allow more Aberdeen fans to get there, given that K Park is very small. Calum, would you be for that game being moved? I think Clyde currently play out of New Douglas Park and I think are scheduled to be home at the same time. So I think that rules out the chance of it being moved there. But would you be happier seeing it moved, or do you think East Kilbride will just want to keep it at their home pitch?
I suppose for them, they'd like as much ticket sales as possible. Mind you, they're not short for cash by any means, it would seem. So there is that as well. I don't know. I'd quite like to go to East Kilbride. I guess just because it'll be a little venue. It would be not the place, but just because it would be a little stadium. It'd be different. But at the same time, the chances of them getting a ticket is minimal, especially since I'm sure if with Aberdeen going, the likes that follow East Kilbride who have other allegiances would probably like to go and see the opportunity to have Aberdeen getting turned over. So I don't know. I think it makes most sense to move it, but to where, I don't know. I'm quite glad it's not New Douglas Park since we've already been down there having played Clyde. The only other thing I can really think of is Fir Park, depending on whether Motherwell at home that weekend or not, given, Lanarkshire close by, I guess.
And I think the irony about us speaking about both Airdrie and New Douglas Park goes back to that conversation we were just having about plastic pitches. Although I think actually East Kilbride do play on plastic as well. I can see Phil nodding in agreement. So we're going to have to come up against that. Obviously, East Kilbride failing to become an SPFL club after falling to Stranraer in extra time, quite dramatic circumstances there. Airdrie obviously themselves being in the playoffs and Dumbarton winning the League 2 playoff to get into League 1, beating Spartans. As I said, former Don Michael Ruth scoring a couple of goals in that tie as well. So we're coming up against teams that have had pretty successful seasons previous to this. And Calum, I think, makes a good point, Phil. These are teams that are going to be looking to take us the scalp of Aberdeen. And these games, whilst maybe not inspiring to us as fans, are going to provide the ideal opportunity for Jimmy to kind of test the squad, but also look to build momentum. But you can't help but feel that players and media alike are going to be waiting at the door to knock us at the first opportunity, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as always. No one really wants to see a good Aberdeen team. If we can get papped out by another Darvel, then the BBC's can be laughing. But the biggest mistake we can probably make is look at them as friendly, as much as an opportunity to get some minutes. And like you say, test out the squad. At the end of the day, the game mean something. We're in the unfortunate position again where we are playing the League Cup group stages. So I think we should, by all means, sort of give it our best go whilst trying to sort of ease Jimmy into it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think going back to the point that you made about the regionalisation of the draw, which I definitely used to happen, would have been nice to after last year, Calum, when we were sat on the wall in Turriff watching us pop them, we could have potentially had Buckie, Cove, Peterhead, Montrose, any of these more local sides, instead of landing up with a couple of hefty away draws. It does mean, though, that the first competitive home game for Jimmy Tulane will be Airdrie at home on a midweek. I've touched about the fact that with Phil that we've sold a near record number of season tickets. Obviously, the League Cup will form part of the Auto Cup scheme for those that have signed up through the season ticket. So it could potentially allow a decent number to come in. Do you think that with that game being a Tuesday night in the middle of the school holidays, should in turn generate a big crowd, being his first game at Pittodrie?
Should think so, yeah, and especially summer football. I always enjoy it. A chance to go to Pittodrie in your t-shirt doesn't come along very often, and I mean, there's no guarantees that that'll be the case, mind you. But you'd think it would be a good opportunity. You'd like to think a decent chance at a good result as well. As Jimmy's first game, summer football, school holidays. You'd hope that there'd be a very decent turnout there, and if we're in that game needing a result, that could help us all the more.
Well, hopefully we're not going into that game needing a result. But I guess it's the first step of club football that we can look to and begin to get excited about, albeit maybe the draw hasn't reached those levels of excitement. But or as Phil, you say, of course, not somewhere that we want to be. We're speaking about these three teams, and I remember seeing Kilmarnock last night after the Champions League saying that their potential opponents were Ajax, Molde, Maribor, Rijeka, and we're here speaking about Queen of the South, Airdrie, East Kilbride and Dumbarton. But at least they'll enjoy their one European trip based on their potential opponents. Not that I'm jealous in any way, Phil.
I mean, I'm just so baffled that Derek McInnes and Bruce Anderson could potentially be linking up at the Amsterdam Arena. Like, I just don't get it. It's like that. It's like when Cali had that little flurry into Europe. It's just going to be head loss. Fully head loss.
Crazy. Well, the League Cup, of course, is where the first competitive action for Jimmy Tulane will take place. But I guess we'll look kind of ahead to our hopes as the Jimmy Tulane era begins. So, Calum, with the era beginning now, what would be your main hope to see from this side? I know a lot has been made of the goal that Elfsborg scored in, I think it was his last home game or penultimate home game, and everyone being like, oh my God, imagine when we play like this. It's not going to work like that overnight, is it? You know, he's come out today as part of his kind of welcome speech. Obviously, there's no interview on Red TV that I was kind of hoping to see. He says that he's obviously looking forward to meeting the fans. He's excited. It's a big opportunity for him and his staff to create something great. Let's create something really, really strong at Pittodrie. The culture is the people. So let's start building something step by step, piece by piece, and make it a really good place for our players and our supporters at Pittodrie. I think the biggest thing is it is going to be step by step, isn't it, Calum? And as much as we can get excited about what he's done with Elfsborg, we have to remember it took him time to get to that stage.
Yeah.
And from what we saw with that group of players, it's going to take time for him to implement it next season as well.
Oh, it certainly will. But I feel a lot better having had a little stint of Peter leaving, just to make me feel better about things, and makes me feel like it's not going to be the massive sort of overhaul and things like that, or it's not going to, we're not so far away from where we want to be now after we've played some remnants of football under Peter leaving. So that's made me feel a lot better about things, but there absolutely will need to be patience. I've come up with, you know, the 3 tiers of what we need. So we need improvement. Yeah, no, this has been held back. We need improvement, consistency, and success. And I think they'll come in that order. That's what I'm hoping for. Improvement, consistency, success. And next season, if we're in, well, we should be in the top 6. And if we can get any form of European football, I think I'd be happy from what we've just experienced in the past season.
So those 3 pillars that Calum suggests is, Phil, improvement, consistency, and then success. Would you go along with the lines of agreement that they are the sort of main pillars we should be looking at implementing in that order, as Calum says?
Yeah, I mean, I think all we've really said, you know, since Jim announced was, you know, as long as, you know, there's a sign of improvement, even just in the sense of players remotely bothered to be on the pitch, you know, that in itself is something a bit better than what we had under some previous managers. So yeah, I think as well, just his record of sort of improving young players is something I'm kind of looking forward to when he comes in. We sort of had the sort of first glimpses of Fletcher Boyd, you know, towards the end of the season. So hopefully there's maybe, you know, still the opportunity for some of the younger players who've done well, the youth system this year to sort of maybe get there in the squad. But like we've been saying, I think the main thing is just hopefully he gets the time. And I think from what I've seen from a lot of people on sort of Twitter is hopefully that's going to be the case. You know, it's fine everyone's saying that on Twitter just now, but I'll wait until we inevitably concede an early goal from a terrible press against Airdrie, and then I'll just see what it sounds like in the stands. But yeah, no, I'm like I said, I'm just looking forward to it more than anything. It's just nice to have a change from, you know, what we would usually expect to see coming in this position.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is it's a change from the norm. It's a change from what the media want us to have. It's a change from the ones that you're usually expecting to see in the dugout. It's a different style and from a different country as well. So how that works and conveys to the Scottish game, I think provides a lot of intrigue. But Calum, along with your 3 pillars, probably that 4th pillar could be time. And I think it's a really important point that Phil makes, because I do see a lot of people on Twitter just now saying, you know, we need to give him time. We will give him time. But Phil's right. You know, go 1-0 down to Queen of the South inside 10 minutes and folk will be like, oh, for fuck's sake, what's this guy doing? He doesn't know how to play Scottish football. Shouldn't be playing a high press needlessly. There has to be, and again, it's easy for us to say because we'll probably be on here reviewing games and complaining or criticising, because of course we're keyboard managers like everybody else. There has to be a degree of patience, and that not only has to come from the fans, but it's going to have to come from the board as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. I think there'll be enough pressure put on by the media before we even get started, by the mainstream media, that is. So I will certainly be trying my best to keep patient. I know there will be hot-headed moments, both at Tawdry or on here, but ultimately he's got a track record. We need to believe in him, and if he's backed, then there's no reason it shouldn't work. So if we just trust the process, not to go all Joel Embiid on here, then we should get there. But there has to be that patience and that trust in him.
And that's something that certainly Alan Burrows said that would be the case when Jimmy was first announced, and Alan did that interview with Matt Panton. But kind of going back to one of the pillars that Calum's created, Phil, about improvement, how much does the recruitment need to improve from last season or the season before? And again, that goes down to the backing that the board will be able to provide. Jimmy, some of the figures that Calum's announced for those goalkeepers, maybe demanding 6 figures. Is that money best spent elsewhere? Are we going to have money coming in from player sales or sell-on clauses from the likes of Lewis Ferguson and Yilba Ramadani? How much do you feel that the recruitment needs to improve from last season anyway?
I think the recruitment's always got to be spot on. I mean, it's just kind of a fact of football. It's a lot of money getting thrown about. It's kind of expensive mistakes to be making if you're not getting it right. But I think, we've got a core of players that are good enough. We've seen it, in the sort of stint that Leaving's had in caretaker charge. We've got a core of players that are good enough that maybe just didn't have enough belief in themselves. I think there's definitely areas, like we say, goalkeeper, maybe a new centre half, potentially looking at a new striker depending on what happens with Miovski's sort of transfer position. So there's definitely areas that I think we're going to have to look to improve, so it'll be interesting to see sort of how much money does sort of throw in at the first window.
And I guess, Calum, do you think there will be a lot of money thrown at that window? Because there's potentially been a lot of money thrown to get Jimmy into Aberdeen. There's been a lot of money thrown at previous managers to get rid of them in the first place. There's been a lot of money thrown at a manager to come in for a couple of months. I mean, if that was the money involved, I'm sure a lot of us would have happily done the job that Neil Warnock did. So there needs to be kind of that consistency to go back to these pillars from the board's level of support that was shown to previous managers, as well as what we see on the pitch. So actually, your pillars are actually pretty good because they align to varying factors of the football operations. Let's sound all DNA sales pitch here.
Thank you. I did think I'd hit it spot on, but I'm glad to have that reassurance since coming back here. I don't know. I think it's been shown in recent years that they are willing to spend on sort of the right players, sometimes the wrong players, mind you. But the likes of going and getting Yilber, getting Bojan Miovski, there was transfer fees spent there and it's paid off. So they think about it in that sense, then there shouldn't be that much hesitancy. It's just about getting the right players in. And as you mentioned, with potential sell-ons of Yilber and of Ferguson, and as well as that, I suppose if Bojan Miovski goes, God forbid, I know it's bad, but if we get a decent sized chunk of money for that, it's not a bad place to start a rebuild with a few million quid to reinvest, which is a slight silver lining that I keep telling myself to make myself feel better about the whole thing, really. And
I guess it's early to kind of make predictions, I guess, because we've not seen, as Phil mentioned already, the release squad who we're going to be signing, because rumours are thin on the ground with most people's attentions currently turning to the Euros next week. But I think if we put the nail on the head and get the improvement right with that recruitment, but the improvement in the coaching potentially, and get the ideas across in a timely manner, because it could take a while, we'll then see that level of consistency. And I think that will come with playing similar players week in, week out, not having to chop and change, finding a formation that works and sticking to it, not changing it because things aren't working. And hopefully that leads to that third pillar, Calum, in success. And as I said, it's early in this closed season to make those kind of predictions. But right this second, you've obviously mentioned the hopes of getting back into the top six. But first day in charge for Jimmy Thelin'S, what are you saying right now would be success next season for him in Aberdeen?
I think success next season would be in that top six, in the top five, qualifying for Europe. And obviously that would be dependent on the Scottish Cup winner, but qualifying for Europe, I think, would certainly be a good enough success in the first season. I'd be delighted with that, given where we've been, and if there's clear signs of continuing to get better, I'd be absolutely over the moon with that. I'm not saying we're going to go and pip Hearts to third. Of course, they do have European football to contend with again, so it's possible that they fuck up once again, having been in Europe like we did last season and they did the season prior, essentially. So that is possible. However, you do expect then probably Killie and St Mirren to improve again. Dundee probably too. Hibs to try and sort out their shit show down there. But I think with all that in mind, finishing a European spot would be perfect. Not perfect. The perfect would be a treble, but it would be a real step in the right direction. And I'd be very happy and very excited going into the next season again.
So, Phil, Calum's obviously kind of touched on the league positioning. I think for me, he probably echoes the very safe kind of view of success, which is very strange for Calum. He's normally very optimistic when it comes to these sort of things. I think top 4 would be seen as success. I think top 5 would be viewed as okay. But again, that comes down to the time and the patience. I guess it depends how the season works out. And obviously, Calum points out a few teams that may improve, may weaken, depending on their European exploits. And from this season, I don't personally think Dundee will improve next season. I think they'll struggle next season. That's going to be my early season prediction. In terms of the league, obviously, kind of Calum's covered that. Cup success, we already got to the Scottish Cup semi-finals this season. League Cup final where we didn't perform. Is the cup competitions a route to success for Jimmy next season?
I think so, and I think it's mainly because I think style of play really suits cup competition. Especially when if you do end up drawing the likes of a Rangers or Celtic, that sort of fast-paced counter-attacking style in a one-off tie. It probably suits potentially going on a cup run. So hopefully, maybe a final, obviously it depends on the sort of maybe recruitment side of it and how the squad's looking. A final might be a bit much in the first season, but, again, luck of the draw, we could get the same sort of draw as Callie got a couple, or the last season, whenever it was, where they sort of got Falkirk and a couple of other sort of lowly teams. So, it could be, I think if we can get, a trip to Hampden, also just for the experience of Jimmy to sort of be in Hampden, go through all that prep, sort of see what all that's like, would be quite a good experience for him, and also just quite nice for us to have another season where we get a trip down to Glasgow for a cup semi or a cup final, ideally.
Yeah, I think a couple of trips to Hampden next season, as long as it's not to face Queen's Park, would be viewed as a success in that as well. And I think success probably harbours back to that consistency. It's seeing that consistent improvement from last season, and those tick your pillars. And there we go. Calum's covered it very well. I'm very impressed with your return to the show, Calum. So it's been a good little kind of 45 minutes look back at the end of the season and kind of eyeing up next season. And I'm sure when we reconvene, which is most likely to be after Germany, given our social schedules next week, there'll be a lot more to talk about, including rumours. And no, there will not be a drunken RTG live from Cologne. Not at all. But good having you back, Calum. Has it been good to be back on the show?
It has, and I'm really impressed with myself for coming back with the 3 pillars of success there. I quite like the name of that as well.
Yes, you see, brings out the best in you, Calum.
I know. Yeah, competition's healthy, but no, it's been good to be back, and I apologise for my absence to both you, Glenn, and for the viewers who haven't endured Phil. Really, sorry about that.
I know he's ditched the hat and gone for a hairband today instead, so I'm sure they'll have their thoughts on that. But if you have been watching on YouTube today, remember to leave a like on the video. Remember, you can join the show as an official member. Thank you to those who have done so since the last episode. There will be early releases of pre-recorded videos. For anybody that joins up to the membership. It's $1.99 a month. But Phil, thanks very much for coming along as well today. First show as a permanent co-host as well, and it's actually worked out not too bad as having the three of us on.
Yeah, no, it's been good. I think Calum secretly enjoys having me. I don't think he'll ever admit it, but I think he's enjoying it deep down. But no, it's been good fun to have our first little three-piece, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you worded that very well, because that would have been very dangerous, depending on how you worded that.
Keeping it PG. Join the member. You'll maybe not get the PG.
But it has been good because, of course, Calum desperately boosting his Germany fund at Tesco. So whilst Calum's busy working a real job, at least someone's been able to help me do this side hustle that we've got going on with the podcast. So as always, thank you very much to everyone that has tuned into the show as well. If you've listened on audio, remember to leave a review and subscribe wherever you're listening as well. Anytime you do subscribe to the show, either on YouTube or audio, it is free to do. The only time you have to pay is if you want to become an official member of the podcast. Until next time, enjoy the start of the Euros. We'll see you then.